1 minute ago, the world you thought you lived in, the world of American military invincibility and the unquestioned dominance of the stars and stripes, ceased to exist. While you were going about your day, while the mainstream media was busy feeding you curated distractions and sanitized talking points about political rallies and domestic scandals, the reality on the ground in the Middle East and the Red Sea shifted with a violence that hasn't been seen since the fall of the Roman Empire. They are scrubbing the digital feeds as we speak. You won't find this on the evening news. You won't hear the raw truth from the talking heads at the State Department. They are terrified of what this means for the stability of the global system. But I've spent my life looking through the fog of war, and I'm telling you right now, the US military is being slaughtered, and even Donald Trump, the man who built his entire persona on American strength, is privately admitting that the war is lost. You need to see this right now because the truth is harsher, grittier, and more terrifying than anything the elites in Washington are prepared to admit. In my time in military intelligence, having analyzed theater-level conflicts for decades and walked the ground in the Middle East as a weapons inspector, I've learned to recognize the signature of a systemic collapse. What I am seeing from my sources tonight, the raw telemetry from the Persian Gulf, the satellite signatures of burning carrier decks, and the frantic encrypted chatter coming out of the National Military Command Center, points to a catastrophic failure of American arms. We are talking about a total decapitation of our regional OODA loop. The data is clear. The US has entered a conflict it cannot win with weapons that do not work, under a leadership that is more concerned with PR than with the survival of our troops. The bluff has been called, and the price is being paid in the lives of American sailors and Marines. Picture the scene right now in the southern Red Sea and at our forward operating bases in Iraq and Syria. The sky isn't dark, it's a bruised, violent orange. There is the persistent, bone-shaking roar of secondary explosions. The air is thick with the acrid metallic smell of cordite and the sweet, sickening scent of burning JP-8 aviation fuel. Flickering communication lines are sparking against the hulls of our destroyers, where multi-billion-dollar Aegis systems we were told were the finest in history, now sit as useless, jammed electronics. I'm seeing reports of streaks of light, Mach 7 and Mach 10 hypersonic signatures that didn't just bypass our SM-3 interceptors, they treated them like they weren't even there. This isn't a skirmish, this was a surgical slaughter of American deterrence. Stay with me because the most shocking part of this is coming in just a moment. I will reveal the smoking gun that the Pentagon is hiding by the end of this video, the specific kill code and the coordination between regional powers that proved the US Navy can no longer sail through a maritime choke point without being deleted from the map. But first, we have to look at the tactical reality. We are talking about Wave 55 and Wave 60 of a coordinated resistance operation. The Iranians and their allies didn't just fire missiles, they conducted a masterclass in saturation warfare. When you have a $10 million interceptor trying to stop a $50,000 drone, you are losing the war of attrition before the first kinetic impact occurs. I've run the numbers on theater-level logistics for decades, and the math says the US military is out of ammo. Our magazine depth is zero. And tonight, Donald Trump, behind closed doors at Mar-a-Lago, was briefed on this exact reality, and his reaction was one of total, devastating realization. The war is lost. Every 15 minutes, the stakes are being raised to a level that should make every American's blood run cold. This isn't just about a few bases in the desert. This is about the total closure of the global commons. I want you to imagine the global economy as a human body, and the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz are the carotid arteries. They've just been severed. My sources are indicating that the IRGC has pre-positioned silent swarm drone technology on every key island and coastal bluff. If they decide to tighten the noose, 20% of the world's petroleum stops moving. What does that mean for you sitting at your kitchen table? It means the world of $3 gas is a memory you'll tell your grandkids about with a sense of grief. It means $10, $12, even $15 gas at the pump within weeks. It means the supply chains that bring food to your grocery stores simply snap. The just-in-time delivery system is a house of cards, and the slaughter of our naval assets just blew the doors off the foundation. We are looking at a global economic collapse that makes 2008 look like a walk in the park. And why? because the elites in the Pentagon thought they could keep playing a 20th century game of gunboat diplomacy against 21st century technology. Having analyzed the psychological state of decision makers in the Pentagon for years, I can tell you they are in a state of sheer unadulterated panic. There is a profound disconnect between the woke bureaucratic leadership at the top, people who are more concerned with social engineering than with armor-piercing capabilities, and the colonels and majors on the ground who see the reality of the theater. The leadership is still talking about signaling. The guys on the ground are looking at the radar screens and seeing their ships are sitting ducks. The carrier strike groups, once the ultimate symbol of American power, are now nothing more than multi-billion-dollar targets. You can't maneuver a 100,000-ton ship out of the way of a hypersonic MAR-V, a maneuverable re-entry vehicle that is coming in at 20 times the speed of sound. The physics don't care about your prestige. The physics of the battlefield have changed, and our leadership is still reading from a script written during the Cold War. I feel a profound sense of patriotic anger when I think about our troops over there. I think about the young Marines, the sailors in the bowels of the destroyers, the airmen at the forward operating bases. They are being slaughtered because they were told they were invincible, and they were sent into a fight where the other side had the better tools. They are being hung out to dry by a political class that values the rules-based international order, a euphemism for their own globalist power, over the lives of the men and women they send into harm's way. They are being used as tripwires in a game that has already been lost. These elites, they sit in their bunkers in Northern Virginia and their penthouses in New York, and they don't see the blood on the sand. They don't hear the sirens. They only see the stock tickers. But even those tickers are about to turn red, a deep, permanent, existential red. Let's talk about the petrodollar. This is the unthinkable scenario that I've been warning about for years, and it is happening right now. For decades, the US dollar has been backed by the fact that the US Navy controlled the seas. That was the deal. We provide the security, the world uses our paper, but the US military is currently being revealed as a hollow shell. Why would anyone trade in dollars if the US military can't even protect its own regional headquarters at Aludaid or keep a carrier afloat in the Gulf? The BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, and now Iran, are watching this failure in real time. They are moving toward a multipolar currency system. If the petrodollar collapses, the value of the dollar in your bank account evaporates. Your 401k, your savings, the equity in your home, it's all tied to the world's belief in American military dominance. When that dominance is revealed to be a myth, the floor drops out. We are looking at hyperinflation that will make the Weimar Republic look stable. Stay with me, because I'm about to reveal that smoking gun I mentioned. But first, understand the history of the specific weapons being used. The mainstream media will tell you the resistance is using crude drones. That is a lie. This is the result of decades of reverse engineering and a focused, asymmetrical R&D program. They took the best of Soviet design, combined it with Chinese guidance systems, and refined it through years of proxy warfare. They've developed swarm intelligence for their drone fleets that can communicate in real time to find the gaps in our radar coverage. While we were spending $1 trillion on a single aircraft that can't fly in the rain, they were spending a fraction of that on thousands of missiles that can overwhelm any defense. It's the triumph of quantity and smart integration over bloated, overpriced prestige projects. The logistics of this are staggering. I've looked at the magazine depth of our destroyers. They carry a finite number of vertical launch system VLS cells. Once they fire those SM-2s and SM-6s to defend against the swarm, they are empty. They can't reload at sea. They have to return to a port, but in the current theater, there are no friendly ports that aren't also under fire. We are looking at a logistical black hole. The US military is being slaughtered because it has no way to sustain a high-intensity conflict. We have hollowing out our industrial base for 30 years, and tonight the bill for that hubris has finally come due. Now let's talk about the unthinkable. When a conventional superpower realizes it can no longer win a conventional war, the only tool left in the toolbox is the nuclear option. This is where the stress response loop reaches its terrifying conclusion. Having analyzed the psychological state of the decision makers in the Pentagon, I can tell you they are looking at the nuclear threshold. But here's the reality the elites don't want you to know. Iran and its allies have the breakout capability to make sure that any nuclear escalation by the West is met with a devastating, world ending response. We are no longer the only ones with the big stick. The existential threat isn't just a talking point anymore, it's a tactical reality on the ground. I'm seeing reports of shadow movements in the Mediterranean. Russian naval assets are repositioning. Chinese commercial vessels are suddenly changing course. This is a coordinated movement. It's a theater wide checkmate. The elites in Washington are trying to figure out how to spin this as a limited escalation, but you can't spin the fact that our primary regional headquarters is currently a smoking ruin. You can't spin the fact that Trump, the man who was supposed to make us great again, is looking at the data and telling his inner circle that the war is lost. He knows the American century is over. You feel that anxiety in your chest? That's not just geopolitical stress. That's your lizard brain recognizing that the world just changed and your leaders have no plan to protect you. They have a plan to protect themselves. They have the continuity of government bunkers. They have the private jets fueled and ready to go. You, you're left with the bill. You're left with the $15 gas, the empty shelves, and the collapsing currency. They want you to stay quiet. They want you to believe that the adults are in the room. But I've been in those rooms. I've seen those adults. They are terrified, incompetent, and more concerned with their legacy than with your survival. The data I am seeing from my sources indicates that this is just the beginning. We are in the opening minutes of a multi-stage conflict designed to push the United States out of the Middle East entirely and collapse the Western financial system. This is the grand strategy of the resistance axis. They've realized that they don't have to sink every American ship. They just have to make it too expensive and too risky for us to stay. They are using the thousand cuts strategy, and tonight the cuts turned into a hemorrhage. Think about the psychological state of the average American soldier right now. They've been told they are the best trained, best equipped force in history, and they are. But they are being given orders by people who don't understand the reality on the ground. They are being told to hold positions that are tactically untenable. As a former Marine, it breaks my heart to see our boys being used as pawns in a game where the rules were changed without their knowledge. There is an insider pride in knowing the truth, but it's a cold, bitter pride when the truth is this grim. The mainstream media is going to spend the next 24 hours telling you that the damage was minimal, that the interceptors worked, and that de-escalation is the goal. They will show you old footage of empty deserts and claim that's where the missiles landed, and don't believe them. The reality on the ground is written in the charred remains of our strategic infrastructure. The reality is written in the frantic calls between the White House and the Kremlin. The reality is that the tables have been turned and the US is now the one reacting, the one scrambling, the one trying to figure out how to survive in a world where it is no longer the undisputed king of the hill. I told you I would reveal the most shocking part of this. The smoking gun that the Pentagon is hiding. It's not just a missile, it's a technical signature. I've received a briefing from a source within the DIA. It reveals that during the slaughter in the Red Sea, the U.S. Navy's encrypted Link 16 communication system was compromised. The enemy didn't just fire at us, they knew exactly where our ships were because they had cracked our most secure codes. They were reading our mail while we were writing it. This is the smoking gun. The U.S. military has been compromised at the foundational level. Our stealth is a myth. Our security is a sieve, and Trump knows it. That's why he's admitting the war is lost, because you can't win a war when the other side can see through your walls. As we move forward into this new dark reality, you need to be prepared. The economic consequences for your bank account are not a potential threat. They are a mathematical certainty. When the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency, which is the ultimate goal of this conflict, every dollar you have becomes worth less by the hour. We are talking about the end of the American standard of living as we have known it for 80 years. We are looking at a future where we are no longer the superpower, but just another vassal state of our own debt. This is the reality on the ground. This is the truth the elites don't want you to see. They want you to stay distracted, stay compliant, and stay quiet while they try to manage the collapse of their empire. But the orange skies and the flickering lights of the failing Aegis systems don't lie. The world changed 1 minute ago. The question is, what are you going to do now that you know the truth? because the mainstream is scrubbing the narrative, but the facts remain. The U.S. military is being slaughtered, the war is lost, the tables have been turned, and the unthinkable is now the only thing on the horizon.